Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of Flerf a Week. After delaying this for too long, I deal today with Nathan Roberts' 200 plus Flat Earth Bible verses. For those of you who aren't familiar with him, Nathan Roberts is a religious flerf of the worst kind. He is so convinced that the earth is flat and that the Bible actually describes a flat earth that no evidence, biblical or from reality, will convince him. He made a nice compilation of some verses that in his opinion describe flat earth, and we're going to overview most of them and see how dumb this guy is. Christians, I apologize in advance for not referring to the New Testament parts. I'm not so fluent in it. A video about the New Testament verses will come somewhere in the future by my good friend MCToon. His channel is linked in the description. No. There were only 3 times that something was created in Genesis 1. The first one is the heavens and the earth in verse 1. The second is the great sea creatures in verse 21. And the third is the human being in verse 27. The sun and the other celestial bodies were made, which is something totally different. I'm not going to get into details about the differences between these actions, but in general, it means that the sun was created earlier. Those of you who are interested in more details, a link to a page that describes it all is in the description. The main problem with translations is that they miss the meaning of some uncommon words and therefore allow idiots like flat earthers to invent bad interpretation to these words. The Hebrew word in this verse is hug, which means circle, but with slight difference. It doesn't mean circle as a noun, it means circle as a verb, like to circle or to move around. Look at Psalm 107:27, you'll get what I mean. Well, in 1 Kings 7:23, the word line describes the circumference of a round object, which is curved by definition. This leaves one of 2 options. Either Nathan Roberts is a total ignorant, or a pathological liar. In both cases, I wouldn't take any of what he says seriously. This claim is the embodiment of stupidity. Flerfs say that the Bible is literal when it suits them, and they say that it is metaphorical when it suits them. Straightway or road simply means that it has no junctions, that it has no turns. From the Philistine territory, which is by the shore, to Beth Shemesh, which is on the mountain, there is no straight road. Not back then and not today. I live in Israel, I know what I'm talking about. As I said before, translations miss some of the meanings. That's the origin of the phrase lost in translation. In this case, the translation mixes between the earth as in our planet and the earth that means the ground. Anyway, as we all know by now, during earthquakes, only part of the ground moves, not the entire of it. Another wrong translation. In this case, however, the mistake is in every version I looked at. The exact same word appears in Psalm 46:5 or 6, depends on the version. God is within her, she will not, and that's the word. I'll give you the pleasure to look for it by yourselves. This contradiction should at least teach you to look in other versions with the highest priority to the original Hebrew. That's just dumb. In this verse, like in many other of such case, it means earth is in its residence, not as the ground. Just like in Esther 8:15, and the city of Susa had a joyous celebration. The city of Susa refers to the population of the city, not the buildings of it. Make up your mind, stupid. These verses are mutually exclusive in the flat earth context. The earth is either on pillars or on nothing. It can't be both. Now, that is an interesting idea that emphasizes the cherry-pickingness of flerfs. In Genesis 11:28, Haran died in the presence of his father Terach, but the Hebrew phrase is exactly the same to what translated to the face of the earth or water. Does that mean Terach's face was flat? Kinda like a comedian without any sense of humor that repeats the same joke again and again, Flerfs keep mixing between the Earth as the planet and the ground. The end of the ground is where the ground ends or where the ocean begins. It is the same place. Ships weren't that sophisticated at the time, so the only way to make war was to get there on foot or horses. Marine warfare wasn't invented yet. Yay! Another bad translation. The word is kanaf, which means the far end of something. By the way, even in biblical Hebrew, kanaf means wing, as in the thing that stretches far from the bird. Like in the previous part, the four far ends of the earth are north, south, east, and west, where the ground ends and the ocean begins. I had this topic on a video I made about the lies of Rob Skiba. Link is in the description, but for those of you who aren't familiar with it, here it is in short. The Hebrew word is rakia. I'm almost sure most of you heard it before at least once. The broad meaning of the root of this word is to spread and make flexible. Look at the first verb at Exodus 39:3. It is a good example. When the Bible was translated to Greek at 300 BC to what known today as the Septuagint, the word rakia was translated into the Greek word stereoma, that means fixed or fastened, which makes sense since it is fixed to the earth. When the Bible was translated from Greek to Latin, what known today as the Vulgate, this word was translated to firmamentum, that means stay, but also means support. When the Bible was translated from Latin to English, there was no existing equivalent to this word, and therefore the translators invented a new word, firmament. It is a nice archaic word, I suppose, but Flerfs look at it and take only the firm part of it without any relation to the original meaning. Long story short, the most accurate translation should be expanse, and it means the atmosphere. So now you're playing semantics. We definitely see the sun rises and sets. The cause of that is the rotation of the earth, but there is no real reason to write it in the cumbersome way of as the earth rotated back a little more to hide the sun below the horizon, Abram fell into deep sleep. But keep on this level of argument, it only makes all of us see the idiocy in your claims. This is what happened when you think you know what's written in the Bible, while in fact you stayed in third grade level of understanding of the scriptures. Joshua never commanded the sun to stop, and the fact that some translations write it as if he did is a major problem. If you read it with some concentration, you will see that this verse comes after the event was over, what makes no sense whatsoever in the context of a command. Anyway, this verse is not a command to the sun and moon, but a praise to the God that helped the Israelites to win the battle in time so short that it seemed like the sun didn't change its position in the sky. The nice thing with flat earthers is that they hold no boundaries to push their nonsense. This entire story is about a miracle that happened with the shadows, what can imply something about the position of the sun, and where we are dealing with miracles, we simply can't ask why the miracle broke some of the natural order, why simultaneously try to make any conclusions about the natural order of things. Let me get this right. Don't flat earthers know what a way of speech means? Even in today's common language, we say moonlight. It simply means the light reaching us from the moon. It has nothing to do with whether it reflects or generates light. But when someone is playing semantics, I guess that there is no bottom limit to the stupidity of the claims. Pareidolia, the word version. The NIV verse at 2 Samuel 11:11 is Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my lordsmen are camped in the open country." The Hebrew origin says pretty much the same. In addition, the word earth in Matthew's Bible, like in Genesis 1:1, looks like this. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. If Flerfs think that earth and earth are the same word, even though they are written differently, well, there isn't much I can do for them. You know, this is probably the funniest argument so far. The creation worshippers are actually flat earthers. who believe that the sun, moon and stars stay suspended in mid-air while making rotations around the center pivot, and they claim that the moon has its own light without any energy source, and they claim that there is a downward force or a universal down for things to fall without any plausible mechanism, and they believe that the amphidromic points cause the tides and so on. The rest of the human race know that there are several simple physical laws and everything in the universe must obey them. And that's for today, friends. I hope we learned today that religion-based arguments, especially when they relied on bad translations, are the worst arguments one can come up with, and that religious flerfs are ridiculous. I want to take the time to thank Nathan Roberts for collecting these verses. He made my life a little bit easier with debunking religious claims about the flat earth. Before I wrap things up, I want to thank my patrons. If you find the content good, a link to my Patreon is in the description. Feel free to like and share the video, and subscription will be appreciated. I was, as always, rndthinker, and I'll see you in the next video.